Well, good morning, guys. It's hard to believe that it's the end of July. It's July 20th, and it's the start of combine maintenance season. As far as I know, I don't have anything major. It's more of for major repairs. It's more of maintenance things, wear and tear items, long-term items. Spin the camera around here. These two little bevel gears right here, they're getting pretty worn, and they're very noisy. So I've got the new ones. I've had them since last fall, just last year, with that thing called a stupid job. I never had time between running the combine and work of actually doing it. And now I do have time, so I'll get them in and give the combine a good cleaning. And then I got to do rasp bars. Rasp bars aren't too terrible. You just pop the whole feeder house off, and then you just stand right there and change out the rasp bars. Not that big of a deal. So yeah, well, let's start on this shaft and see where that gets us. All right, so got everything apart. Everything went good. I torched this outer bearing because for the $20 that it costs, it's not worth my fight. It's going to get replaced anyhow. I'm not taking something apart to put a used bearing back in. Call me crazy, but so I popped the seal out. I cut the outside race in half. Then you saw me slice that inner race in a couple spots. Then it's just a matter of nick the balls out of there, and with minimal labor, minimal risk to smashing a finger or anything like that. It's done, it's out, it's good to go. I just got to clean emery cloth that bore up. Emery cloth, well, the other bore is different. It has a bearing cap, so the bearing sits in the cap. It doesn't sit in the casting. But the old gears that come off, they would just howl. Whoa, 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 whoa. And you can see they sit like that, and how much clingety clang there is there. Versus the new ones that just mesh together, and there isn't much clingety clang. They just mesh together. So that's just a matter of get them up in place, and the bearings will be in at Napa tomorrow. On a quick side note, we picked up this little impact gun, Flexzilla Pro. That little tiny thing is the strongest half-inch gun we have. It needs special fittings, so the fittings are different. You see on the size there, the outside is very similar to the old 1/4 inch, but the inside is tremendously bigger. And then the end of the hose, you got to get a different coupler, but it's an automatic lock. But this little sucker, it has power. Holy cow, it has power. I mean, compared to my hand, how tiny that thing is, it beats our. I will take the old Ingersoll Rands. I will take them to my grave with me. They were just a fantastic old gun, but they were big, and this little tiny thing just destroys them. Awesome little gun. So if you're looking for one, I would not be scared to recommend this little gun at all. So we'll get this gear up in place, and then the other gear, and then we'll have to check shims, to set that gear lash just right. And it's fairly quiet. That's kind of the cool thing. We bought this. Whoever the dealer of this did not give it to us, but like, here, pedal this for us. No, we bought it, and the local dad does a lot of business with a bumper to bumper out of Rust City, and they're like, hey, buy this thing. This is a fantastic little gun, and he was looking for one, and so that's how that is. I do not get kickbacks or reimbursements if you guys buy one. So it's just a great little gun. Just sharing that with you. I'm just pulling the shaft up. Kind of hard with one hand, but you get the point. Clean the shaft up nice. Never sees. With any luck, this is the last time this shaft ever comes off. The first time it came off in the last almost 30 years, 88 or 20 years, 25 years, or 20 years, I don't know. I can't do math today. Why can't I do math today? It'd be 30 years. This is the first time this shaft has been off in 30 years, and with any luck, it'll be the last time. But nevertheless, I paint everything on something like this with never seize. Why? Because I don't want anything to seize. It just works fantastic, helps fight corrosion. If for whatever reason, if a guy ever has to take it apart again, then you got less rust than without it. And it works really nice on assembly. It helps parts slide together easier, so you're not banging, pounding new bearings onto shafts kind of deal. That's all. So the gear went on most of the way. Just the hand, so with the handle of the hammer, just finish putting that gear on, and it's home. Now we just set it up, and we wait. Until then, let's get started on the feeder house. Right, it kind of started to actually downpour, and so I hurried and cleaned everything up, and then of course it quit. So I put the phone in the pocket, so I'm not going to pull everything out. I'm just going to kind of just pick away at it here. So this bracket gets unbolted from up here and up here and up here, and that bracket can come off. Then that will allow me to slip the belt off. And then I just got to get these hoses disconnected from the top of the feeder house and get them up on top of the platform. Obviously clean my tools and bolts and whatnot up. And then it's just a cable here for the reverser gearbox. This combine has a reverser gearbox, so if I get a slug in the feeder house or on the head, I can just pull a lever and it puts it in reverse and helps spit it back out. So that works really good. But I do need to get that cable off. I have my harness for the header height system here. I got to get that hung up with the hydraulic hoses. So it isn't bad. It isn't bad at all. I mean, you're talking maybe an hour start to finish. Get my sensor for the header height, position sensor for the yield monitor. And this side there is nothing. This side is just the lift cylinder on both sides, but this side just has the lift cylinder. And then when you're ready to take it off, there's two pins here on each side, one on each side. You just pop that pin up. We come up with the pallet forks here, set this on the ground on top of the pallet forks, drive the pins out of lift cylinders, and take them top. There's some top access plates off of the feeder house back up under there that we take off. We can stretch a chain to the top shaft and hook it to the loader frame up there somewhere by the top mounts of the cylinders. You know, you wrap it around the big framework up there and then just drive it away. Not a bad deal. You could do this out in the field if you really had to. So yeah, I'm gonna keep plugging away in between some rain showers here and see what I get done. All right, got the new bearings from Napa. I don't mind using a vise to put in bearings and something like that. Got it good and never seized up. You take the vise and a lot of times on these little tiny cast housings, I like the vise. It works very well. The big press, you know, the 50-ton press, if you're not quite square on these thin housings, every once in a while you might crack the housing before you get the bearing square. If it's a big heavy cast housing, you can easily square the bearing back up with the press. But in a vise, it works so nice to just, you know, put it in there, put a little crush on it, and then flip it 90 degrees, a little more crush, 90 degrees, and pretty soon you'll feel it just kind of whoop, and then it goes into place. And once in a while with a hammer, just give that a little tickle, whack, and it usually goes in. So that's assembled. You can see our never sees squirting out. That's assembled, and let's go put it in. We can't forget our shim. What that does is that sets this shaft position to set the clearance between the two gears. I don't know if you can, how good you can see. There's a little gap in there. The gears sit, boy, that rolls so nice. I might need to take the shim out to bring that bearing over to hold this gear into place. We don't want that gear going too far to the side. Then you put all the load right on the tip of the gear, and that's when you get very premature wear. So I'll have to pull the bearing off, which is a 5-second deal. I only tighten the one bolt. Pop that bearing off and see what we got for shims in the drawer to put behind there to keep that guy in place. So these are always a fun one with a ball bearing. You need to be careful. So we got to drive this outer race into this housing, but at the same time this inner race onto the shaft. So we want to do the best we can to make sure that this inner race goes on the shaft very smoothly. So if we drive on the outside, we're not sending energy through the ball into this inner race, driving the balls against the sides of the races, because the last thing we want to do is to put any kind of blemish on them ball bearings. Granted, all three surfaces are extremely hardened, but it can happen. In that case, I would like to put, if this wasn't, you know, I test fit it before I put the shaft on to make sure that this bearing with hand force can get on that shaft. That way I know when I drive this outside race, it's going to go on and go on nice. If that's not the case, Then I would use the gear itself. If the gear's too big, I'd get a piece of pipe with the bolt so you can tighten against the inner race a little, drive on the outside, retighten the inside, drive on the outside. That's super important for the life of these bearings. And when we go to drive, I like brass. You got several things. One, the face of the hammer is hardened. And when you hit hardened to hardened, even a punch is hardened. Hardened steel to hardened steel is a great way to chip or damage each other. It's also a safety concern. That's how you get fragments in your eye, because they will ricochet and bounce. The brass is going to absorb some of the energy from the hammer. You know, there's going to be energy lost, so you lose some driving efficiency, but that's okay too, because if we hit here, then we want to come down and hit here and kind of walk that thing in. We don't want to just sit up here and drive, because that's going to cock it, and it makes it harder and harder, and then you start to stress the bearing, you start to stress the cast. We get pretty thin cast. You know, granted it's 1.5 inches wide, but still it gets thin enough down here that we don't want to have to go through all that labor. So a little bit of just some patience and a tap, or you got a good 5/8 thread, make a puller pipe that you can just walk the bearing with a threaded puller, just walk the bearing into place. I like to get the sprocket cleaned up enough so it slides on the shaft nice. So then if we have to do any pulling, it's just with the bolt itself. We're not trying to hammer and fight, and that makes unproductive, and the guy gets nothing done. So there we are. We are ready to roll. We're good to go. Everything. The turn is the whole auger, and out there is turning, and it just rolls that nice. Nice. Put our chain back together. Together again. My tears keep on falling. Continuing with our feeder house project now. I believe I am ready. Let me just set this down. That's my safety stop. So I got everything here. I believe I just got to cut this zip cords to get that harness free from the feeder house, and just get this little bracket opened up. Other than that, I believe I am ready to lower the feeder house down and pop the pins and get my chains up top. So with the tractor in place, I got a beam down there so the feeder house can't come back too far. I'll get the access covers off and we'll get the chains hooked up. So we just drive the pins out. There's the accumulator. We got to make sure to shut him off. But yeah, I don't know if I can set the camera up for a little action. No. Behind the gear, you can see the shiny little bolt head right back there. That's just the bolt to keep this pin from working up. So you just got to get that little bolt out, then we can take the pin off. I don't know how good you can see that pin back there, but I tighten up the cable just so that guy can bounce back there. There. Now we'll see if we can't come backwards with the tractor. couch off over here. I'll just back up, kind of keep an eye on stuff. I just bumped the clutch and kind of let the tractor roll just in case something's trying to be hooked up. Guys, I think we got her. Now there's a million. We've done this out in the field where we left it hooked. If you had a bigger header, a heavier header like a corn head or something, we've come under here with some blocks and jacks and propped it up so the head keeps it kind of there and whatnot. So yeah, there's our cylinder. Let me get a safety stand under this and then we'll get talking. Well, here's where the magic all happens. And where the mice live over winter. But yeah, you can see the wave in these bars. There's a lot of life left. They're a hardened bar from St. John's when St. John's used to be in business. The problem is that I've straightened them enough times after rock damage like that. I've got a bit of small grains due to this summer. So waves like that in the morass bars, that's a potential spot, especially right here in the center. And that it goes through several bars. That's a big red flag for me because with the small grains I got to do this summer, I don't want potential gaps where grain can get through. And I've straightened these bars enough times that I actually had one break and come apart last year. Here's a replacement bar already, a cheap replacement bar already, and it got a good dent in it, so that's kind of frustrating. But so I'll have 7 new bars to put in, and you can see, so there's a stock bar. You can see where the taper starts here and how little thrashing area there is. On the St. John's, how much they added all the thrashing area. The problem is it's very sharp on these edges. And I think I was actually getting grain damage from that spot. I don't know. Maybe not, but you know, if the cob has to rub this way, that's the whole point, is these are designed that as they come down, they're going to try and get the cob to roll, and then these are going to come down and get it to roll the other way. So maybe this leading edge is good enough, and this back edge doesn't matter if it's a little on the sharp side, but I want to do a good job this year. So I need to just start taking them out and putting the other ones in. Not a terrible job, not the most fun job either, but it's something that needs to be done on a regular basis. No different than any other combine on the market. So I'm going to get going on that, and we'll check in with you guys later.